We've had a little bit of a break from notable hecklings of Trump administration and right-wing officials, but I have for you today arguably the most prominent one in a long time, Ted Cruz, who ended up leaving his restaurant date, I guess, with his wife yesterday after protesters insisted with a "We Believe Survivors" chant, and it was pretty great. And it previously happened to Trump's Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristen Nielsen. It happened to Trump's wacky policy advisor, Stephen Miller, who was, I think, trying to have sushi, right? Let the guy have a salmon roll.
Yeah, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, too, right?
Sarah Huckabee Sanders at the Red Hen something or other in, I believe, West Virginia or Virginia. And now it is Ted Cruz at D.C. restaurant Fiola, where you can get a beautiful tasting menu for about $150 per person. They will gladly pair it with their grand wine pairing for an additional $210 per person, giving you a delightful evening for $360 per person at the dinner. Great restaurant. Try the caviar if you get the chance. But Ted Cruz and his wife apparently not able to. Check out what happened. The video is from Smash Racism DC. We're going to play it for you. My two favorite moments of the video, and I want you to listen for both of these because they're just great little details. In the midst of the "We Believe Survivors" chant, at one point you're going to hear Cruz in that cartoonish voice of his say, "God bless ya." And then the top moment for me is when one of the protesters says to Cruz that his opponent, Beto O'Rourke, is way hotter than he is, which is just brilliant. Check out the video.
We believe survivors! We believe survivors! We believe survivors! We believe survivors! We believe survivors!
Beto is way hotter than you do.
We believe survivors! We believe survivors! We believe survivors!
God bless you.
Excuse me, let my wife through.
We believe survivors.
We believe survivors! 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 Sexist, racist, anti-gay! We believe survivors! We believe survivors!
We believe survivors.
Leave the premises. It's a private space.
How many of you support Kavanaugh?
Ted Cruz and Brett Kavanaugh are best friends.
Vote no on Kavanaugh!
All right, that's good.
Cancel.
How dare they? Ted Cruz ended up having to leave his beautifully paired wine dinner to go to a nearby 7-Eleven, and he had half a dozen of those hot dogs that they have rotating on the spinner machines all day. Not a good night for Ted Cruz. I've gone back and forth on this, okay? Or maybe not back and forth. I've been nuanced on this, saying I support protesting, but not violent protesting, and I've wondered about the sort of pragmatic effectiveness of any particular protest like this. I am increasingly on the side that we are going to need to make people uncomfortable to achieve change. Every time I say this, I get angry emails from the audience. Some people even cancel their memberships. I am not saying specifically that heckling Ted Cruz at a restaurant is going to achieve any change in the future of Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation, for example, right, which is the topic of this protest, I believe survivors. But what I am telling you is that if protesting was limited only to the protests that those in power are comfortable with, nothing would ever change, right? Nothing would ever change. If you go to the people that maintain the status quo and say, Mr. Oligarch, Mr. Person in power, whatever, people want change, but we want your okay for how they should protest and advocate for that change. Give us the list of how people should protest. They said, oh, sure. Write us letters to our congressional office, and then my aide will file it. And then you can hold a sign quietly if you want, but it's got to be smaller than 3 feet by 3 feet. And you can do it in a free speech zone at least 200 feet away from where I'm going to be speaking. No, by definition, you have to understand that protests and civil disobedience and general strikes, like I talked about yesterday, they're not going to be liked by a lot of people. That's the nature of these things. So when people say, you're encouraging disrespectful behavior, he's a public servant, but he's allowed to go to dinner, and you, David, are only saying it because you disagree with Ted Cruz, and if people did it to Bernie, you'd be mad. Wrong. First of all, go look at my commentary from a month or two ago when Alex Jones heckled Bernie Sanders at an airport. At no point did I say that simply going up and heckling him or asking questions is the problem. The problem is that he's heckling him about things that make no sense, and I disagree with what change he's trying to bring by heckling Bernie Sanders. By the way, in that viral Alex Jones Bernie video, My friend Ari Rabinoff was the guy traveling with Bernie. And I saw him in New Orleans last month, and I asked him, did Bernie really not know who Alex Jones was, or was he playing coy when he said, Ari, who is this guy? And Ari said, no, it's even better because Bernie genuinely had no idea who he was.
Wow.
He said after the fact, who was that guy, Alex Jones? What?
Marco Rubio took the same approach, too, after that Facebook congressional testimony.
Harder to
Although,
believe.
I think Marco Rubio knows who Alex Jones is. Just pretend
think he
he's not
does.
relevant, though.
But back to our primary topic. I might disagree with why you were protesting, but we have a broken democracy here. We have voter suppression. We have policy for and by the rich. It's a straight up insulting thing to say, to suggest you can't protest nonviolently in these ways. We are running out of ways to affect change. They are setting it up so that you can't disturb the system. It's a shame, but heckling politicians is one of the fewer and fewer remaining ways to get attention and to express discontent. And as I told you yesterday, you've got stagnant wages, you've got healthcare that's tied to jobs, you've got people commuting hours to their job whose wages have not increased for 40 years in real terms. We have a system designed by those in power to prevent people from having the time or means to protest in a serious and effective manner. Civil disobedience, general strikes, heckling politicians. You can do this stuff, and I say good for you. I might argue with them, Pat, because I might say, well, I don't agree with the cause you're protesting for, or I think you're on the wrong side of an issue. But I'm not going to say this is disrespectful and you can't do it, because we have increasingly fewer and fewer ways to actually protest.
And of course, the best case scenario is Ted Cruz getting voted out in November, Beto O'Rourke replacing him.
Yep.
But even then, Cruz is going to be a senator until January, and he's probably going to be able to vote on that Kavanaugh confirmation. If not
Exactly.
Kavanaugh, whoever else Trump picks.
No doubt.
So you have to be able to do more.
You have to, and if you still disagree with me on this, let me know. I'm ready and willing, and I hope people will call in during live calls on the Friday show and tell me if you disagree, and we can talk about it.